Chapter 6. Now, who can't handle their bag? 87 teased, watching Alex bolt upright from where she sat on the edge of the old shipping container, startled to find him right beside her. What the hell? She snapped, staring back at his charred and mangled suit. Although used to 87's comings and goings, they still startled her from time to time. She'd put his ability down to advanced cloaking, tech they weren't yet privy to, but to this day she hadn't worked out exactly how he managed it. These tricks. Her best guess was that Inter had developed pre-existing functions of existing lenticular lenses, incorporating them into Sample's body armor, allowing him to remain hidden in plain sight. Though studying the junk on him right now, perhaps not. She leant back, staring at his suit that smoked. You smell like the rest of us now. Trying to fit in? She jested, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Smoke still hung over the far side of the third, its cloud reaching out toward them. Your father, Router, he was a good man, 87 offered. God, you're nosy bastards. She ground, resenting Inter's stolen data and algorithms they clearly monopolized, hacking thought-activated tech their citizens used. 87 watched her glossy eyes flick back at Inter, not bothering to hide his disapproval. Wasn't a smart move, confronting Hobbs' right-hand man. He's no man, her words bled out. Still, not your brightest moment. Scared men are. Predictable. Redwood eyes flicked from him to glare out over the first. Half of her wished she'd pulled the trigger. This is what I find so fascinating about humans. Us pregogs? She watched shudders fall over astute blue eyes. That's what the rebels call you lot. Hobbes's generation of gods. She could tell by the way he'd locked down. He didn't care for it. What is it that surprises you about us? Our humanity? Your profanity. Alex's mouth thinned. I call a spade a spade. To her surprise, instead of his usual sarcastic retorts, 87 extended a muscular arm a little uncomfortably and gave what he seemed to consider a hug. You rebels need to be careful, he finally offered. I'm not one of them. Not one of anything, really. 87 gave a thoughtful nod. Something in common, after all. Asterisk. From where Nash sat in his car, his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, listening to Alex cozy up with the enemy. 87 was one of Hobbes's toy soldiers, one of his genetically modified eugenic samples used to oppress the masses. His eyes pinched on the image of 87 he received through a hack in Alex's VR headset. The sample looked like Hercules himself, long blonde hair with a square jaw and cerulean blue eyes. Nash tried flexing his bicep in comparison, only to quickly cover it, shrinking back in his seat. Asterisk. What happened to the quarter-life crisis? 87 continued. I'm just passing through till I can get off this rock. Alex shrugged uncomfortably, shifting the token arm from around her. Apparently it's gonna happen in my lifetime. So I'm told. Reliably so. 87's expression darkened. Still, everything you lot have done has played into Hobbes's hands. When it suits him, it'll get nasty. You worrying about me? Alex mocked with a wry smile. Someone taught me to use my leather, man. A rare laugh escaped as she tapped her head. Yet here we are. Gonna blame your tools? It was Alessandro. You were right about that, at least. All humor seemed to evaporate from her. Course I was. It all led back to Dad. Seemed to highlight how unnecessary his death was. So how's it with the source code at Harrow? Any insights or changes? She moved on, keen for distraction, but 87 shook his head. Really? Alex's brow rose. What? You might not have noticed, but there is change. Making time for someone else's problems when there's nothing in it for you and none of your sleazy come-ons. 87 shrugged. I've grown. You've changed. You're... Alex grinned at his clear discomfort. Nice. Her face shone with rare amusement as she watched his expression sour. Nice. 87 scowled. He'd never been called something so benign and pathetic in his life. Worse was the idea of something having real control over him without him noticing. He was meant to be in control. Complete control. It's not so bad, you're less of a cock. Pass that title on, apparently. One I'll cherish. She gave him a friendly nudge as she stood to leave. Alessandro, huh? Alex. She caught the can of Perplex he threw her way, The stuff was like gold dust, the keys to freedom, yet he hands it to her as though nothing. Didn't have to, she snapped, having meant thanks. And risk catching your ugly mug on our monitors? A sardonic smile laced his handsome face. Don't think so. Asterisk. Kicking down the shift, Alex sped back to Rebel Camp with 87's update. Alessandro of all people, protecting a man like Hobbs. The irony wasn't lost on her. Velda King's empire, Inter, the people's technocracy. Founded by rebels, turned autocrat and tyrant. Asterisk. Pins and needles rode up Nash's arm, knuckles still white where they gripped the steering wheel. No wonder Alex had been distant. How could he compete with Hercules over there? Traitor. Alex, of all people, mixing with the enemy, with one of Hobbs's samples, his eugenic monsters. Worse, if 87 were on their side. Nash felt his chances with Alex slipping further away by the second. How was he meant to compete? Least I'm real, not some carbon clone or plethora of surgical enhancements, he groaned, wondering just how enhanced was enhanced. And did Alex know? Heavy brows fell over his grim expression as Hobbs's number flashed up on screen. Silencing the call, Nash chewed over options. He could rat out 87. Hobbs would no doubt take issue with the fact his best sample had gone rogue and started handing out classified equipment to rebels. But that would place Alex in the firing line. What was all that about a source code? A source code for what? The samples? Nash grinned. That had to be worth something to Hobbs and an Achilles heel for Hercules over there. Asterisk. Back at base, 87's jetpack sizzled out on the landing pad which overhung the first and a distant view of the third. Striding between cargo shipments destined for Halo, he smiled, ignoring Hobbs, who jogged up from some way off, demanding an explanation. What's that? 87 grinned from ear to ear as Hobbs yelled across the floor. Handing his gear over the counter, he posed provocatively for the attractive clerk who scanned his biometric markers at the desk. Our water, Hobbs panted. To the third! The pretty brunette flicked up the usual automated debrief without a word, popping it up between 87's smile and where she stood, staring down at his gear. The uniform lay charred and still smoking, with what she assumed had to have once been the accompanying set of body armor, which now lay crumpled beyond recognition. Busy day, 87 drawled, leaning through the projection toward her. Sweeping the uniform off the counter and into recycling seemed to anger the stout little man jogging up behind him, and she swiftly made her way to the back of the store. I demand an answer! Hobbs cut in as he caught up, eyes wide with horror at the file 87 splayed from his hand in response, his other speeding through debrief and the usual multiple-choice answers. Shutting down 87's projection before anyone could see, he shook with the effort it took to control his temper. How 87 came across that file, he'd very much like to know. It detailed an AI simulation he'd put together, showing what would happen should they not increase water supplies to the third, and consequences of continued fires, civil unrest. Unrest which would inevitably lead to an increase to his security and defense budget, one Velda had repeatedly shot down until now. Managing to switch it off, Hobbs's eyes darted about before glaring up at 87, whose hand had come to rest on his shoulder. Thanks to you, we've managed to cut costs and save lives. Just as well you checked it out, sir. 87 gave him a congratulatory slap on the back as Hobbs's eyes narrowed suspiciously on the results that popped up on 87's psychological profile. It was impossible to cheat, the best from Neuralink and AI systems, analyzing brainwaves and your automatic nervous system. But there it was, a perfect bloody score in all areas, including honesty. You need to work on your people skills, sample, Hobbs snapped, expression thunderous, sending the clerk who'd peered round the aisle back into hiding. Noted. 87 spun on his heel and head for dorms, throwing back a salute and smirk Hobbs couldn't place, but knew he didn't like.